Yeah, I'm meeting that. Carl from Purple Moose Plays. Today I'm taking a look at Last Dungeon Dice Roll of Fortune, the newest game in the sort of small box pocket line from Jugame and designer Hiroshi Kawamura. This is another twist on the previous game in the series Last Dungeon Pocket, which was a sort of solo deck building game that has previously been twisted with Escape from the Moon, which added a sort of movement puzzle. Well, this time it takes the core mechanism of deck building and twists it into it's essentially a dice placement game where you're rolling dice and placing the dice onto cards to get different abilities and activations. Thematically, this is sort of set after Last Dungeon Pocket. Many years in the future, the evil dungeon lord that you were controlling before has sort of brokered peace with the kingdom, and everything has been going well until that dungeon lord goes and kidnaps the princess from the kingdom. And now you're playing sort of a dungeon manager for that dungeon lord, keeping that princess captive, trying your best to hold off the hordes of incoming adventurers, scouting those adventurers, and as I mentioned, using dice placement to activate the abilities of those adventurers that you've scouted to sort of help keep out further adventurers until you've eliminated them all and kept the princess safe. In this case, kept her from being taken back from where she actually should be. Anyway, no disclaimer needed on this one, as I did pick this one up while I was traveling in Japan this summer. As a big fan of the previous two games, I'm very excited to see how the dice version of this plays. With that said, let's head down to the table to see how this one plays, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. To set up a game of Last Dungeon Dice, begin by taking the 10 event cards with the sort of dungeon picture on one side and the events on the other side. Give them a good shuffle, setting aside 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, to be used as events, and using the other 7 as dungeon mana, which is basically going to be sort of like the health value for your dungeon. Then take the princess with the regular side face up. There is a different side for some of the scenarios, but setting the regular side princess face up like that with the 7 remaining dungeon cards or event cards on top. Next, to continue setting up sort of my play area, I'm going to take this sort of life tracker or power tracker with this tracker card, setting those off to the side of the screen as well. That doesn't need to be set to anything. That will be set to the health value of each enemy when they come in later. And then finally, the remainder of my player area is going to be a set of 3 starting cards, 2 of which are going to be these trap cards, and then 1 which is this sort of undeveloped area in the dungeon. So those 3 will get placed out just like that in the sort of center area of play. Next, to set up these sort of adventurers that are coming in to pillage my dungeon and try to take the princess back from us, I'm going to take the adventurer cards, separating them by level. Here we've got level 3, level 2, level 1, and then there's this single level 4 card, which I'll set off to the side for now, shuffling each of these 3 stacks face down, and then taking 1 card from each stack as my sort of starting crystal amount or value. So 1, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 1. And then to finish setting up the adventurer deck, we're going to start with this legendary hero card, which in the standard version of the game will be sort of the last boss that we're fighting off against. Take 1 of the event cards, placing that on top of that card, turning over the level 3 adventurers, another event card, the level 2 adventurers, another event card, the level 1 adventurers, all like that face up, placing that out into the play area. And then finally, to begin the game, we're going to take the top card from that deck and place that out in front of us. What that means is this is the card we're currently working on, and we can always see what the next card coming up in order is going to be. Last Dungeon Dice is going to play out over an indeterminate number of rounds, where each round I will be rolling dice. which of course I should also put out on the screen, I will be rolling dice, trying to overpower the sort of power level or health level of the incoming adventurer, working my way through all of these cards until I can defeat the legendary hero, in which case I win the game. However, along the way, anytime I don't defeat an enemy, it will be depleting my dungeon mana. If all of the dungeon mana is depleted and the princess is captured, I will lose the game. And each round is going to play out over a series of 3 to 5 sort of phases. The first phase is very simply rolling my 3 dice, like that. And unless I have any abilities, I will not be able to re-roll or manipulate those dice in any way. The second phase is the action phase, and that's when I'm going to be using these dice to activate the different cards in my tableau to hopefully damage the enemies or to be able to manipulate the dice in some kind of way. I'm going to be able to use item cards that I may have acquired throughout the game, and you'll see how that works in just a minute. Or I can once per round spend 3 crystals to return 1 dungeon mana, means one of these cards, back to this pile. So if I get damaged, these will get placed off to the side, and I can always spend, as shown on these cards, 3 crystals to replace one of those cards back onto that stack. And again, that's sort of my health for this game. There are 7 dungeon mana cards and then the princess. So if I take 8 hits without recovering at all, I will lose the game. And again, I can only do that recovery using 3 crystals to refresh one of those cards once per round. But items I can use as many as I have if I have them. And the dice, I can place as many of them as I can place in order to attack. The other 2 phases only happen if I manage to defeat the incoming adventurer. So if I'm able to, using my cards, do damage equal to or greater than this number, I will defeat that adventurer. And when I defeat an adventurer, I will be given 2 choices. The first choice is that I can pay this cost in crystals from my available crystal supply to recruit or scout that adventurer into my dungeon party, then working for me to fight off future adventurers. And the way that's going to work is I'm only ever going to have 3 slots in my tableau. So I'm going to choose a slot in my tableau, turning the card there sideways, placing the new card on top. And what that does is some cards, as you can see here, will have an additional attack value. And that means in the future, if I do an attack with that card, I will get that additional attack strength added to my attack value. But it's worth noting that in the case I place, say for example, not this card, but another card that allows me to manipulate dice rolls that does not cause damage, I do not get this additional damage. This is only additional damage and cannot cause damage unless the card itself is already causing damage. The other option I can do is if I choose not to spend the crystals, or if I don't have any crystals to spend, I can simply turn the card over and collect that as more crystals to spend later for scouting new heroes or adventurers, or for refreshing the dungeon mana cards in my dungeon. And it's worth pointing out that the number of crystals you receive will always be the same number as the level of that adventurer, but the cost will change depending on sort of what the dice requirement for that adventurer is and what kind of skills they give. In addition, every time a level changes, means when I move on to the next section, as you saw in setup, there is an event card. The event cards are generally going to be items that I take into my hand that can then be used as items in future rounds. And when that happens, I simply take that event card, flip it over, and get that item, and then draw the next adventurer to deal with. So that's pretty much it for the game. The only other thing I need to explain to you is what the cards I have do, what this card does, and let's talk about what the upcoming card does as well, so that you have some idea why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. The 2 trap cards you can see say 1 to 3 on them. That means I can place any die with a value of 1 to 3, and the trap will simply do the amount of damage equal to the number of pips that I place on there. So I can place 1 to 3 means that each of these traps can do 1 to 3 damage. This sort of unexplored or unbuilt area in my dungeon will simply allow me to take one of the dice that I rolled, placing it on there, re-rolling it and then placing it again. So it just allows me to re-roll one die. And it says here at the bottom that can only be done once in the phase. So I can only do that once per round. The upcoming enemies, again, this has a 4 value that I must cross or match to beat. This ninja will allow me to place 2 dice, or up to 2 dice. I can place 1 or 2, again of strength 1 or value 1 to 3. And the ninja will give me an attack value of those 2 things added together. But it also says that if the number of pips on both dice are the same, so 1, 1, 2, 2, or 3, 3, I'll get an additional 1 damage from that placement. But again, I should stress that I can place a single die, so it could operate exactly the same as a trap. The next one that's coming up is the Apprentice Hero, which is exactly the same as a trap, 1 to 3, scoring the damage or dealing the damage equal to that value, except that this Apprentice Hero will sort of grow as he ages, meaning that once the enemies hit level 3, so level 3 and level 4 enemies, he will do an additional 3 damage. So it's 1 to 3 for a level 1 or level 2 enemy, but it's going to be 4 to 6 damage against a level 3 or level 4. So that's actually a pretty nice card to have, but so is this one because it could do as much as 7 damage itself. But it does, of course, require 2 dice. All right, so with that, we rolled a 3, 4, 5. I can't do anything with a 4 and 5, but I do have the ability to re-roll 1. So let's just take that 4 and re-roll it. And I re-rolled a 4. So all I can do is place a 3. Whoops, that was a 3. Place a 3, doing 3 damage against him. Well, he starts at 4 power. That's what this tracker here is for. And I did 3 damage, so they are down to 1 health, but unfortunately I did not kill them. Means I do lose 1 mana. Next round. Rolling 3 dice. 3, 4, 6. Looks familiar. But in this case it doesn't matter because that 3 will do 3 damage. He only has 1 power left, so I do defeat it. I wouldn't mind the ability to do more damage to fight that hero, but it does take 2 dice. I think I'm going to pass. I'm going to turn that into a crystal for now, and we'll see how that affects us later on. Moving on to the next enemy then is the Apprentice Hero that I mentioned, but here we've got a Mimic coming up. The Mimic says the die that I place on there can be increased or decreased by 1. So it does allow me to manipulate the dice a little bit more specifically than the cave does. So we'll see when I get there, but for right now, I definitely want to pick him up. Rolling. 3, 4, 5. This is interesting. All right, well, we will place a 3 there, but that's only doing 3 damage. So let's hope I can roll a 1 or a 2 using this cave structure. And again, I re-roll a 4. This is not going real well, but okay. That's 1 more damage. Next round. 3, 5, 5. Again, doesn't matter. The 3 takes him out, and I will recruit this guy. So I'm going to spend this 2 crystal, removing it from the game. It's worth mentioning, I could have paid with 1 and 1. I could even pay with the 3, but you do not get change back. So I would have wasted a crystal if I did that. And now I get to choose where to place him. I'd like to keep the ability to re-roll a die. So I'm going to turn one of these traps sideways and add him there, which means he will always do an additional +1 damage. Then comes the Mimic. Upcoming is the Treasure Hunter. Treasure Hunter says you can place 1 or 2 dice of any value, and he will deal damage equal to the number of dice that's placed on him. So it's an automatic 1 or 2 damage, regardless of what you rolled. But 1 or 2 damage is pretty low. That said, he does only take 1 crystal, and it can be stacked. So it would be an additional +1, so 2 or 3 damage if I stack him. We'll see. Let's fight the Mimic and see how we do. All right, 1, 3, 4. This is a better roll, but it doesn't really matter. 3 + 1 is 4 damage. I defeat the Mimic. And I would like that +1 or -1, but I don't think I want to spend 2 crystals right now to cover up that cave, so I'm simply going to take that as a crystal. Treasure Hunter is my last level 1. Next is an event card. Rerolling for the Treasure Hunter. 3, 6, 6, but that 3 is good enough in either place because he only has 3 hit points. And you know what? An easy 2 or 3 damage is better than a hard 1 to 3 damage. So we are going to take that Treasure Hunter because he is also a +1. So if I get something later, I can easily cover him and get more stuff. And that's an easier way to guarantee I do some damage. All right, so our first event comes up. And this is the Sands of Time item that I discovered. It says all of the dice that are not yet placed on cards can be re-rolled. So this is a one-time re-roll of as many dice as I want to that haven't already been placed on cards. So we'll leave that there for now. And the next 2 adventures coming up are the Dwarf and the Prophet. The Dwarf is a 7 strength, 3 crystals to buy. You can place a 4 to 6 on the Dwarf. He doesn't do any damage though. The Dwarf will allow you to refresh mana cards at a cost of 1 crystal rather than 3, but only when the Dwarf is triggered. So not great, and it is pretty expensive, but he does add a +1 for future attacking adventurers. The Prophet requires you to place 2 of the same die, or 2 dice of the same value, and it will double whatever the next damage is. Which could be useful for this guy against level 3 and level 4, but that removes another battle or removes my manipulation abilities. So I don't know if I want either of them. I might take them as crystals, but let's see how the battles go. 1, 3, 4. All right. That means starting at 7 power, this 3 + 1 is 4. He's down to 3. And this 1 and 4 is 2 because I placed 2 dice +1 is 3. We have defeated the Dwarf. And yeah, I'm going to take the crystals. Like that. Prophet moves over. Next is the Centaur. Centaur requires a 4 to 6, and it says that it will score double the amount of damage. Let me rephrase this. The dice that are placed on cards next to it, not the value, but the number of dice placed on cards on either side of this, doubled is the amount of damage it does. So if there was 2 dice on one side or 1 die on both sides, that's 2 times 2 would be 4 damage. If there was just 1, that's 1 times 2 is just 2 damage. So basically 2 or 4 is what's happening. Not bad. Better than this and requires dice that this doesn't have. So yeah, I might want that. I don't really care about this double one because I have to place 2 dice there. Leaves me only 1 die. Not that great. And 2 crystals would be nice to have to start bringing some of these back and so on. So let's see what's next. Starting at 6 power. 1, 2, and 6. I think that works. That's 2 + 1 is 3, down to 3. 2 dice, 1, 2 + 1 is another 3, dead and crystallized. Like that. Next comes the Centaur, and after that is the Cyclops. Cyclops takes 2 of any dice, but it says that if the total value of the 2 dice together is 8 or higher, then the Cyclops will do 8 damage. That's big. That's real big. Takes 2 dice. But I think I'm going to skip that one then. Aim for that one, and I might get rid of my reroll. Let's see what happens. First things first, fighting the Centaur, starting at 8 power. 4, 5, 6. Yeah, see, this is where it gets not great. I'm re-rolling the 4. and it's a 6. So the best I can do is place 2 dice there. That does 3 damage down to 5. Like that. I lose another mana. Again against the centaur. I should have used that, but anyway, that's fine. We'll save it. 1, 4, 5. I only need to do 5 damage. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We win. And yeah, I'm taking a crystal. Cyclops comes out last level 2. Event is coming up. This turn I will spend, and let's use the big 3 because I can't get change for big things. Losing that 3 to return one of these, and remember I can only do that once per round. Rolling on the Cyclops. Realistically I should roll before I do that, but that doesn't change anything. 3, 4, 5. It's the best I can do. 3, 4, 5. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. With 8, he's down to 1, but I do take a damage again. Then rolling again on the Cyclops. 2, 3, 5. Doesn't matter. Anything works, but that's a huge hit again. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dead. I am going to spend 2 crystals. And I will recruit him, and I'm being risky, but I'm getting rid of my reroll. Second event coming out is the failure. It's basically a failed return spell. But basically what this says is it subtracts 2 from the value of the adventurer. So I guess the adventurer is trying to cast a spell to escape from the dungeon, and I throw that at them to make them fail, lowering their power by 2. So we'll hold on to that. Next coming out is the Evil Lord, or the Demon Lord. At a 16 power, he's got a double thing. This is really cool. On a 4 or 5, it does 5 damage. On a 1 or a 6, it does 14 damage, but then everything in that stack goes bye-bye. I still really like that. Next up is the former hero. So I guess the sort of disgraced or lost hero. On a 4 or 5, you can place the die there, and it says that you deal damage equal to the number of remaining mana cards. So right now that would be 4 times 2, double the number. So that would be 8 damage. Not bad. But if that goes down, my damage goes down. Vice versa, though, if I heal up, my damage goes up. Those are both really nice to have, but this can do one big smash against the final boss, so that could be worth having. Let's see what happens. We start at 16. I roll 3, 5, 6. That's actually great because 5, 6 goes there, which is more than 8, gets me 8 plus 1 is 9. So 5, 10, but less 1 is 7 remaining. This 3 plus 1 is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets me to 3. I could use that, but there's still 1 hit point left, so that's that. I get hit. We've got 3 left plus the princess. Rolling on that. 2, 3, 5. I only need to do 3 damage. Any of this works. Let's just do the weakest damage. 1, 2, 3. It's dead. I want that. Spending a 2 and a 1 as 3. Recruiting that. And getting rid of my treasure hunter. So that's plus 2 here. So he's doing 7 or 16, depending on how I use them. Next comes the former hero. And up next is the Barbarian, 16 power, 2 crystals to buy, requires a 6 to do 6 damage. Not great. I think I might stick with what I've got here unless I get something that manipulates dice, because that would be nice to have. But let's see what we can do. Rolling on the failed hero, 17, 1, 5, 6. I don't want to put a 1 there because that would destroy all of that. So I'm going to put a 1 there. And 5, 6 there means 8 plus 1 is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this 1, and I think I may have messed this up in the previous round, and if so, I'll leave a subtitle below. We are fighting level 3 now, which means I'm doing plus 3 damage. So 1 plus 3 is 4, and 1 is 5. So 5 and 9 is 14. Unfortunately, we're left with 3 left. That goes bye-bye. Rolling again to do the final 3 damage against him. 2, 4, 5. Any of that works. Let's do 4, 5 is 9. So that's more than 8 plus 1 is 9. Very dead. Taking them as a crystal. Barbarian moves over. Next up is the dragon. Dragon requires 2 dice and has to be 1 higher than the other. So like 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and so on. And Dragon Breath, its ability says that it causes 10 damage if I can place, like I said, 2 successive dice. Maybe, but I'm not sure that I need to replace anything here. Because he's not going to add a +1, he's not going to add a +1. I might just take these as crystals to save myself. Use my reroll, use my minus card. Yeah, all right, let's fight the barbarian. 16. Rolling. 1, 4, 6. Again, I don't want to put a 1 there. In any case, I'm spending a 3 to refresh 1 mana. 4 and 6 is 8 plus 1 is 9. Off of 16 is 7. And that 1 goes here, plus 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Still to 2. The mana goes away again. But re-rolling one more time, 3, 3, 3. Look at that. That's huge damage. 3 does nothing here, 3 does nothing here, but that's 3 plus 1 is 7 on a 2. She's gone. That's mine. Final level 3 is the dragon. And I realize I could have used that event to kill that barbarian 1 round earlier, but I'll hold off to the last level, I guess. 1, 1, 1. Not great. Could use that to wipe it out, and that's it. I don't want to do that. That's a bad roll. Still does 5 damage, though. And if I can do better the next time, that's fine. Yeah, I'm going to use a crystal or 3 crystals to refresh. I'm going to do my 5 damage, knocking from 17 to 12. Take my damage again, fighting them. 1, 5, 3. Still not great. Oh yeah, 3 and 5 is 8. That 5 also does that. Let's see, if I do that, I need to hit for 12. That's 4, 5. 5 and 9 is 14, that works. Otherwise I could do 5 here for 7. 3 and 6 and 1 is 7, that's 14. Either way, let's do it that way to be different. 5 here does 5 damage, plus 2 is 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They had 12 left. They're done. That flips. I'm taking crystals. I'm good with this. Last event of the game. Says the adventurer's power is restored. It's a save point. And this is not an item. This is an automatic happen right away. And what it says is I can remove 1 crystal card, not 1 crystal card from the game to recover 1 dungeon mana. Yay. So that's a 1 for a dungeon mana based off of this event, which is now out of the game, and we are fighting the legendary hero. So rolling first. Well, first setting this to 35. Rolling my dice, 1, 6, and 2. I'm going to use both of my items. So he's going down to 33 from my -2 on there. Actually, not using both of my items. I don't need to reroll. But I am using a 3 crystal to refresh that. Then, this is great. That 6 goes here, that 2 goes here. 6 means that's a 14 damage one-off. 14, 15, 16 is 5, 10, 15, and one more is 16. They're down to 17, but that goes bye-bye. And then this is 2 plus 3 is 5, and 1 is 6. 5 and 1 is 6. They're down to 11. I lose one more mana. Yes. Next turn, rolling my dice, is 2, 4, 5. I might as well spend my last 3 crystals to recover one more time. 2 goes there, 4, 5 goes there. That's 8 plus 1 is 9. 5, 10 minus 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5 and 1 is 6. I have just defeated the legendary hero. Victory is mine. All right, so while I'm down here, I do like to take a look at the components. You've basically seen everything there is to see. If you've seen either of my reviews of Last Dungeon Pocket or Escape from the Moon, it's very similar what you see here. But again, I really love this sort of paper cutout, punchy color artwork in these games. Just want to show you some of these heroes and so on up close so you can see more of the artwork. Close up. Whoops, that's upside down. And some of the other ones might be as well. Some things that you didn't see here. This guy here, Lost Technology, he allows you to flip the die that you placed there to the opposite side. This is like a citizen of a long lost age kind of thing. This here, the sort of star mage, you place 3 dice, and if those 3 dice total 12 or more, they do 14 damage. You've seen most of these others. There's probably one more, I think, in here that you haven't seen. Just want to show you the art up close because I do really love the way this all looks. I think this Gambler is the 3rd one that you didn't see. That's the level 1 card that started as a crystal in my game. Again, you place 1 die there, and it allows you to sort of hold that die as is for the next action phase. So if there's a specific die you want for the next time that you don't want to use this time because you don't need to deal with damage or whatever, you can hold it on this card. So yeah, that's basically all of the characters. I just want to show you the art. I will show you the other events in just a second. Yeah, I really do love all of the artwork here. Looking at the other events and items that you didn't see, because there are quite a few. Here we found some crystals. This says roll 3 dice, and if 2 of them are the same value, you get 3 crystals like that. That's an instant event. Here's an item. The chalice, it says dice that are not placed, you get to increase them all by 1 value. This is like a statue of an elder god. And it says you can spend 3 crystals to recover 2 dungeon mana. This one is sort of a mirror of truth. And it says that you choose 1 die. Hold on, I can't read this as I'm holding it on the camera because the kanji is small. Give me just a second. You choose 1 die to use again. So a die that's already been placed, you get to choose and reuse it again somewhere else immediately. Next, this harp says that the next enemy, I see. The next attack that you receive from an enemy does no damage against you. Dimension 0, this is another instant event. It says that you remove 1 item card. So if you have an item card in your hand or sort of in your available supply, remove that from the game to recover 1 dungeon mana. But if you don't have any items, it does nothing. And finally, this is another item, an evil die. And it says, choose 1 die that hasn't been placed and set it to whatever value you'd like. So that's basically it. The artwork, again, is great. The cards, have an interesting sort of matte finish to them. When I first got them, they were really hard to shuffle because they kind of stick together. But the more I play with them and the more they get a little bit scratched up, and I don't mean damaged, I just mean a little bit scratched up on the finish, they shuffle much nicer. I don't have any real problems with them anymore. Again, there are some scenarios in the game. I'll talk about them in my final thoughts. But again, there is this sort of evil princess, or this sort of leveled up princess. I'll talk more about it again, what the story is and so on. I haven't played it yet, but I will before I give my review. But she's another final boss that can happen. Also, the legendary hero that I played with, where did he go? Also has the ability to get added in as a playable character. Here you place 3 of the same die, and he does 16 damage. But you don't have to place them all at once. So you can continue to place dice there until all 3 are locked in, and then it does the damage. So that's pretty cool. That comes back into scenarios later. Otherwise, you've got that victory card and that failed card like that. That's basically all there is to the game. Now, I did play with these 3 gray dice. I do not believe these come with the standard version of the game. I think this is like a special edition of the game that I got, but it did come with these 3 dice in the packaging. And let me explain how that works, because the Jugame Pocket line usually comes, and as this one does, in these small tuck boxes like this. No rules. The rules are all online at a PDF online, which is nice because it means they can continuously update and make corrections, or not corrections, but clarifications to the rules. But it is something you should be aware of, that there are no rules in the box. However, something they did this time that I haven't seen in any of their other games that made me very excited. Granted, it's in Japanese, so you'll have to be able to read Japanese, but it comes with a very nice sort of round step-by-step phase diagram, and also a very quick and handy setup diagram that can get you back into the game setup and playing through quickly once you've already read the rules. So it's kind of rules in the box, but not the detailed full rules. And then I said that the dice came, well, obviously the dice don't fit inside this tuck box. So as you've seen, if you've watched any of my other videos from these small games from Jugame or some of the other Japanese indie publishers, the whole thing came inside this sort of foil Ziploc. So the cards all go into that box like that. This was placed in loose separately, as was another document that does have the scan code, the QR code for the rules, and then the 3 dice also fit inside this wallet or envelope thing. So that's basically it. But yes, since I did get the dice, I will talk about them. They are wooden dice. They do have rounded corners for what that's worth. I think they're really nice. They're nice and chunky, but they're not super heavy. They roll very well. Now, black on gray might be a little bit difficult to read, but not horribly so. And I do really like the way that these dice look. So thumbs up from me for those dice. That's basically all I have to say about the components. Meet me back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed the playthrough. This is now the sort of 3rd game in this thematic or mechanic series of games, Last Dungeon Pocket, Escape from the Moon, and now Last Dungeon Dice. I was a huge fan of the original Last Dungeon Pocket. I thought it was a really cool, interesting twist on a solo-only deck-building game. Expanding into Escape from the Moon, I still really enjoyed Escape from the Moon, but I felt like the movement puzzle was a little bit more or different than what I wanted from the original game. But I was really excited to see how this one would play because I am a fan of dice placement. I was a fan of the original game. I was excited to see it going back into sort of that same universe or world as the original game. So I got it to the table and I've played it a bunch of times now. And I have to say, overall, I'm really excited about this game. Again, I love visually and sort of thematically, story-wise, how this game plays out. But beyond that, I do enjoy the sort of motions that I go through as I play this game. There's lots of stuff to think about here, and now it adds in this added sort of randomness of the dice rolls. When I roll my dice, I place them to activate the heroes or to activate the traps or the different things in my dungeon to help fight off the incoming heroes or adventurers, really. And it's interesting because, at least to start, there's not a whole lot of dice manipulation. But then as you push forward through the game, you kind of have to decide when to sort of level up your abilities, because you do only have those three sort of rows of cards that you can build on. And some of the cards that you're placing will have that +1 attack. So even just by adding something new to your dungeon, you could potentially be leveling up the ability of your dungeon to do damage overall. But you also have to pay attention to, is it better to sort of get different kinds of dice manipulation to make sure the bigger cards that you have are always hitting? Or is it better to sort of spread out the abilities of your cards based on different values of dice so that regardless of what you roll, you're able to activate something? Are you aiming to get lots of small things that are constantly hitting on a regular basis, or are you really putting all of your sort of ducks in one basket, hoping to hit that one big hit that does a ton of damage all at once? There's a lot of thinking and a lot of balance into which characters or which adventurers do I scout? Which adventurers do I flip over to crystals? And this is not just because you need to pay attention to how you're building your dungeon, but also making sure that you have enough crystals to pay for the adventurers that you want to add to your dungeon, and also to pay to maintain that dungeon mana so that you don't die before the end of the game. So there is this nice balance of when to take crystals, which adventurers to focus on, which combinations of adventurers to focus on, which adventurers to slot in just so that in the future you can slot in something else and get that additional +1 attack value. Which of the three slots to slot those adventurers in, sort of what are you getting rid of when you replace it with the new thing that you're taking. And all of these sort of decisions on top of each other really do make for a fun gaming experience, and I do really enjoy playing through this game. I've had a lot of fun playing through it. I have a lot of fun seeing the different sort of thematic characters in this game and how their abilities tie in. The events that come out generally help you in some way, but sometimes hurt you if you didn't prepare, or are useless if you haven't sort of kept things aside to use for future turns. So there's quite a lot to think about as you're playing through this game. Now, I am sort of talking slowly or cautiously now because I do really love this game, or at least really enjoy the experience of this game and the sort of turn-by-turn decision space and just the sort of experience of playing through the game. But my one small caveat here is that this game specifically, all of the games in this series so far, have felt a tad bit easy to me. Escape from the Moon was nice because it added in a scoring system, so even if it was easy, I wasn't getting the highest score every time, so I could try more or push harder to get a higher point value the next time I played the game. This game has removed that point scoring system, and it does feel quite easy even compared to the other games that I already felt was pretty easy. I have yet to lose this game. I've played the core game of this probably 7 times or so yet, and I haven't lost once. I've also played some scenarios. Let's talk about the scenarios. There's one scenario that's a tutorial that's supposed to be extra easy. Maybe if you're playing with somebody young, or you just want to see how the mechanisms of the game work, you might try that. But again, since this game already feels really easy to me, I will never play that tutorial. But then there are 2 other scenarios. And let me start first because the story of these scenarios is interesting. The second scenario tells the story that basically it turns out the princess is actually the sort of child of the demon lord and the queen. So she's got royal blood and evil blood, and this sort of combination has turned her into this sort of evil being. And she's been locked away in this basement to keep her from turning into this crazy, powerful being. And that hero at the end of the core game has freed her, and now she turns into this crazy evil person, and she becomes the sort of boss of the first scenario, or the second scenario, the first real scenario. And then there's another scenario after that, that's like after the princess has now been defeated, this dwarf goes back into the dungeon and discovers the sands of time that allow you to turn time backwards. And you, as that sort of dungeon manager under the demon lord who doesn't really love the demon lord, knows about this sort of special power that the hero has that could have sort of removed the evil from the world altogether. So now you're sort of recruiting the dwarf and using the sands of time to go back in time to use that special ability to completely wipe things out. Thematically is really, really cool story-wise. But the way that these 2 scenarios play out is basically the main princess, the evil princess storyline basically adds in a slightly harder boss at the end. And the previous boss actually gets scouted into your dungeon automatically when you get to him, and then you face off against the princess. And in the last one, you actually start off with more crystals. It means there are less adventurers in the adventurer deck, but then also the princess is the last boss. You do still recruit or scout the final adventurer, the hero, into your dungeon. But then most importantly, in the final one, you're required to use the hero to deal the final blow because thematically he has that special ability that can eliminate evil from the world. And that special ability is triggered by playing 3 dice with the same value. The cool thing though is for that hero's ability, you can play each of those dice individually. So basically you're trying to stay alive long enough so that you can trigger that final attack from that hero to wipe out the princess as that final blow. And that adds an extra wrinkle to the game that does make things a little bit more fun. And realistically, the princess one makes it slightly more difficult, but you do get the power potentially to take out the princess from the new hero. So it's not that much different, but it is a little bit more difficult than the standard game. That final one where you're required to deal the final blow with the hero does add in quite a bit more difficulty because you do have to be able to stay alive long enough to trigger that ability with the 3 dice of the same value, since you do only have 3 dice. Because as you're placing dice, they stay on that card, so then you're using less and less dice while you're not using that power. So it does add more difficulty, and likely from now on when I play this game, I will play one of those 2 scenarios, more likely the hardest one, just because it adds more difficulty. The problem though, specifically with that last one, is the other possible problem with this game, depending on who you are and what kind of game styles you like, is that everything is activated by a roll of the die. And there's not a whole lot of manipulation of the dice in this game. Now again, that is part of the decision space to decide on whether you're focused on getting more manipulation or getting stronger abilities or more abilities. So there's that, but know that you could have a game that's super easy because you just keep rolling all the right numbers, and you could have a game that you lose very quickly just because you keep rolling the wrong numbers and nothing is triggering. So there is a bit of that, and playing that hardest scenario when you are sort of waiting for that final power to trigger, that 3 of a kind to trigger, could just mean that you're rolling the wrong things over and over again and you die just because you run out of time. So that does add a little bit more of the randomness to the game, but you do have to pay attention to how you're building up your dungeon, and you do have to pay attention to how you're saving crystals to prepare for that, because remember, in that final scenario, you start with double the initial amount of crystals. So there is more ability to maintain the dungeon mana so you can sort of chug along at the end trying to get that big hit. All in all, I also spoke to the designer of this game, and he mentioned that yes, this is probably the easiest of these games and one of the easiest games he's made, but he suggested that realistically all you need to do is start with, say, 2 or 3 less dungeon mana cards to up the difficulty without really changing the dynamic of the game too much. And he said in a future version of the rulebook, he's actually going to put that in as a variant in the rulebook itself. So maybe I'll start playing with just a few less dungeon mana cards, but in any case, I don't really care if this game is easy just because it looks great, it feels great, the theme is cool, and the sort of turn-by-turn decision space and just the fun of rolling dice and seeing what you can do with the numbers that come up really does make for a fun experience. This isn't a huge game. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. So the experience it gives me and the amount of time it takes and the fun little twists in my brain as I'm playing is enough to make me excited about this game, and it is enough to make me keep playing this game. Now, one more thing, this game does have an expansion that was released right around the same time, and I do have a copy of that. So I am very excited to open the expansion and to see what that adds to the game, and you can probably expect that I'll be back with at least a review of that expansion, if not another playthrough using the expansion components. In any case, I'm excited to see what that does to the game, if it adds any difficulty, what kind of cool twists it adds, and so on. So I will be back for sure with more on that. I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that you enjoyed it. As always, if you did, I ask that you like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.